will just say that last week, organized real estate, a lot of things occurred. We had a meeting with almost all the boards of Ontario in one place, which was fantastic. That's it there. Where we were discussing a data share agreement so that we would have one source for all listings in the majority of Ontario. So we're making big steps forward on this. That meeting was an all-day long meeting that didn't start out very well, but it ended very well. So we have a lot of work to work towards. There's no solution right now, but at least we're all at the table, all the big players, which is fantastic, because there's nothing worse than having to go to multiple locations to find data and information. And God forbid somebody doesn't have access to all those sources and they miss a listing or two. That's going to affect their seller, their buyer, and that's not doing the right service. So we're working forward towards that. That's awesome work on the part of all the boards to cooperate. And then on Tuesday, I hosted a fireside chat with the 6 MPPs in Mississauga for the Mississauga Grand, which was a historic event. OREA has not even put together something like that. OREA did attend with Tim Hudak. We had the MPPs that actually oversee our business. They're from Mississauga. So the actual minister that oversees and is the boss, quite frankly, of RICO, he's a personal friend of mine. He showed up. His parliamentary assistant, who's also Mississauga based, was there. The Associate Minister of Housing was there. So we had 3 of the top 4 housing ministers in all of Ontario here in Mississauga on Tuesday for 4 hours. And one of the big takeaways and wins out of that was we had the minister on record state that the cooling off period issue for resale homes is not going to happen. So that's a great win for government relations for us, because that would have created a whole bunch of problems where the buyer would have an opportunity, of course, to walk away from a transaction after 2 or 3 days. It currently occurs in British Columbia, and it's meeting with complete failure in British Columbia. So I think the combination of that, our research, we actually polled, used a polling company called Abacus Data that polled consumers and sellers, and to the tune of about 80% sellers do not like that idea. Can you imagine, right? Like, we accept in good faith an offer, and then 3 days later, a buyer says, yeah, I want to walk away. So what's happening in British Columbia is they have that now on their books. And it's caused actually a lot of speculator investor people getting into the market and tying property for a couple of days and then walking away. The price to walk away is minimal, like a couple $1,000s type of thing. And these speculators, investors are looking at that as a cost of business, right? So we didn't want to import that to Ontario. Bad idea. Keep it out west. Let them chew on that for another year or two. But we got that big win on Tuesday, which is fantastic. The legislation is most likely going to come in phase 2 part of TRESA, so Trust and Real Estate Services Act, in possibly as early as the end of June, but most likely September is my guess. So according to all the work that's still being done behind the scenes. You had a question?
Yeah, I didn't get that cooling off period issue. What is that exactly?
A buyer would have the ability to walk away from a transaction after you've negotiated one. And
okay, that was going to be introduced in Ontario, you're saying, but it's now not going to happen.
The minister made a commitment on the podium that they would not be doing that. It's going to happen, though, in pre-construction freehold. So for those of you trading in pre-construction with condos, there's a 10-day cooling off period, but it didn't occur for freehold. So if you were buying a detached new home or a semi or a townhouse that's freehold, that 10-day cooling off period did not apply, but it now will apply, but that's only for new homes. And it's a great thing for that, because of course, you're talking about 10, 12, 15-page documents from the builder, which are all builder, friendly, right? They're to protect the builder, not so much the consumer. So they're introducing that aspect to the pre-construction world, which is, I think, phenomenal. We congratulate them on that as well. They also are laying some very heavy fines for the builders that are backing out of pre-con deals with buyers that have purchased in 2019, 2021. And of course, the pro ratas that they would have done back then would not have contemplated the excess labor costs, material costs, and red tape costs, quite frankly. So a lot of these builders are coming back to buyers and saying, yeah, you, if you want this property, you owe us another 200,000 or 150 or whatever the number is. Otherwise, we're releasing you, we'll give you your deposit back and bye-bye, right? So the government is taking a really hard line on that. We've had a couple of occurrences like that with builders here. So the fines are pretty stiff, but that's an update on organized real estate. So we'll get into the actual class. So today is objection handling at your fee. The first slide would be on page 52. And why is that not going to go forward there? There we go. This is the psychology of objection handling. So on page 52, as you know, any of the red is where you can fill it out in the blanks on your workbook. But the psychology behind objection handling is to initially agree with them. This puts you on the same side as your client prospect. Start with thank you for asking the question. It acknowledges that they have a question. Thank you very much, Najee, for asking that question. I appreciate it. Right? It makes them feel good. I'm listening. I'm not ignoring them. Right? So it's just a simple kind of starter. The next one is to clarify their concern. Okay, Najee, so what I'm understanding here is you are talking about this, or what I understand is you're saying this, right? So he's given the opportunity to repeat back to you the objection. So he said it, you acknowledge it, and you get him to say it back to you, right? Because maybe when he first said it, it wasn't exactly how he wanted to say it. So it's clarifying for him. Number 3, isolate the issue. Find out if they have one or more issues. So, you know, he might be saying something that's regarding the price of the home is what you think the objection is going to be, because he doesn't like your strategy of coming in at 20% below market value. That might have been what he originally said, but he may have wanted to talk about something else, right, with regards to the price. So you're clarifying and you're unbundling it. Number 4, deal with one issue at a time. So if he has 2 issues, the 2 biggest ones are the price of the home and the fee you're going to charge. Let's not deal with both at the same time. And my advice to you is split the 2 up, with price being the first one to deal with, price of the home, and then number 2 is your fee. Because here's the reality: if you can't agree on the strategy and the pricing of the home, there's no sense in even trying to negotiate and argue what your fee is going to be, right? So if Najee has a vision that his $1 million home's worth 1.5 in his mind, you're not going to have a bona fide listing. What's the point then in discussing your fee when you're not going to have the ability to actually sell a property? That makes sense to everybody, right? So I always wanted to get the price on target and agree to with the seller before we move on to my fee part. Okay. Number 5, build agreement through build bridging questions. Can I make a suggestion? Does that make sense? You hear me say that one all the time. I love that one. Does that make sense? Because if it doesn't make sense to Najee, he has the opportunity to clarify that with me. Well, no, I don't understand, Mike, your reason for going 20% below what you think the value is. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. It goes against all logic to me. Can you help me out? Right. So that's a clarifying opening type of question. Remember WOPEN, wide open questions I talked about before? Yeah. Can I share something with you? That's when you're going to want to use a story that you have in your personal experience as a realtor, or you've heard from another realtor, where choosing a strategy that the seller's, you know, trying to have you adopt led to a failure. Can I share something with you, Najee, that in a marketplace where there's not a lot of listings, but a lot of buyers, but by putting it out there 20% below, we're putting this big net out there to catch all these buyers. Yes, most of them have no ability or capacity to buy it from you, but we're throwing that net out there. By going right at market value or above, like the traditional way, we're not throwing as big a net out there. Does that make sense now? Makes sense. Correct? So it's the way of dialogue in the conversation, right? Can I tell you my concerns? And so that would be something along similar lines. Like, I have a concern if we come out at the market right now, because there's so many buyers and so few listings. If we come out right at the list price, my concern here is that the buyers that are looking at it are thinking you don't want $1 million for your house. We're coming in at 800. You list at 1 million. They think you want 1.2 because that's strategy that's out there. That's my biggest concern. Does that make sense? That makes sense. Right. Number 6, finish every objection with, do you have any other questions? Because he may have one of those things just sitting back there, lingering in the back of his mind, and he didn't have an opportunity to ask it. but something I said maybe triggered that, then he gets an opportunity to say that. And he goes through the whole same process again. That makes sense.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Okay.
This is a simple format to encapsulate that. Repeat, approve, build agreement. The RAB formula, RAB, repeat, approve, build agreement. Okay. Next one. Amateurs practice until they get it right. Professionals practice until they cannot get it wrong. Amateurs practice until they get it right. Professionals practice until they cannot get it wrong. Okay. That was one of my definitions. For instance, athlete doctors spend hours practicing, rehearsing. They do it over and over again until it's perfect. Here's my world, the hockey world. And I coached a player that became the #1 overall draft pick in the NHL back in 2003-04, Rick Nash. Rick Nash would tell you, if you're standing here, that he practiced 3 to 4 hours conservatively for every hour of game time when he was an athlete. He's retired now. He had a long career, won a couple of gold medals at the Olympics for Team Canada, was the leading goal scorer at 19 years old. There's only in the history of the NHL 2 other players in the history of the NHL that did that, Wayne Gretzky and Jimmy Carson, and Rick was one of the others. But Rick would tell you he practiced way more than he actually played. Why? Because the game time, you know, is game on, right? Basically, right? And so he goes out there, makes a couple of mistakes, a couple of errors. He goes back to practice and works on those errors. So the next time he doesn't make that mistake. And in practice, he would tell you, and every other top athlete would tell you, they're actually playing at practice the next game. So they know who their next opponent is. And when they're doing their drills and their warm-ups and whatnot, they're actually in their mind, they call it projection in psychology, they're projecting to the game at the practice. So they're actually imagining and playing out scenarios in practice before they occur. Why? Because their coaches have looked at the tendencies, the capabilities of the other team and say, okay, Najee is a defenseman, and if I'm coming up as the forward to beat Najee and deke him out, 80% of the time Najee goes this way. So I don't want to go that way because, you know, he's going to defend that way. So I go this way. So that's his tendency. Or the goalie. The goalie's got a really weak glove hand, so shoot high on the glove hand, or he's low on his blocker, or whatever, right? Or his 5-hole. So they've got this all mapped out so that when they're practicing, right, they're doing 3-4 hours of practice for every hour of the game. It's awesome, right? Yeah. How many hours are you spending in your profession? This is a good question to ask yourself. Are you spending, let's just say that your listing presentation should take you an hour, right? You're in there for an hour and a half. Are you preparing 3 to 4 hours for that listing presentation? Now, I'm not talking about the administrative, grabbing of the data for a CMA and things like that. I'm actually not talking about in your mind, rehearsing and going through the actual listing presentation to yourself or to somebody else. Are you actually doing that? Or are you showing up without any, prior practice and winging it? Because if you are, you're potentially inhibiting yourself from a large fee. If it's $1 million house and the fee that you're going to get is your portion's 2.5%, you're talking about 25,000 up to 30,000 with your HST that you're walking away from, that you've not invested a couple hours of practice. So to me, if you're going to be a professional in this business, you really have to do 3-to-1, 4-to-1 ratio on what you're doing practicing for what the game is. Your game on is the listing presentation, is the CETO situation, the come into office for the buyer. Those are game ons. So if you're not doing 3 to 4 hours to prepare for that, ask yourself then, why is the reason you didn't get the contract signed, right? Which is number 3 in my list. Lead generation, book appointment, convert to contract. If you're not converting to contracts, you're probably not doing the practicing enough to get it, right? Next slide. If it will go. We got technology gremlins here, I think. Not going? Oh, no, okay, back up. Internalization versus memorization. So it's kind of again, back to the professional amateur look. When you're internalizing something, you're the professional. When you're memorizing it, you're the actor that's just for practice lines, right? So when you make it your natural inside voice, that this is like I'm having a conversation right now about Star Wars with Najee. right? He's a Star Wars guy like me. He is too.
Everyone in this office is.
It's a prerequisite to work on my staff
God.
that you like Star Wars, okay? Because when the boss walks around and talks about Star Wars, you gotta listen, right? So, but when we're talking about Star Wars, like there's nothing forced. It's just so natural because it's internalized to ourselves. Now, if you don't like Star Wars and you want to have a conversation with them, you may memorize some of the names, but it's a forced conversation kind of thing, right? Because you're not really you've not embraced it, you're not in love with the situation, right? So yeah, we do have lots of fun, him and me, in that. So memorization lacks the natural flow. Next time, and hopefully we don't get too many of them anymore, which is the dreaded phone call from the duct service company, or the lawn maintenance company, or the whatever company. Next time you get one of those calls, listen to the person talking. The vast majority of them are trying a memorization script, or they're reading it from a script. But there's going to be the odd person that is a professional that knows their game. It might be another realtor, quite frankly, that's calling around, right? Because we have a lot of those in our brokerage. See how good they are at the internalization versus the memorization, and map yourself, engage yourself, and rank yourself against that if you were to do that. Internalize it, make it your own, okay? Commission pie. So I think we keep this in one of our books, the books that we give out for the sellers guides, right? We have something similar to this, but essentially what you've got here is the two sides to the equation. So let's just, for argument's sake, say that the fee here is going to be 5%, right? So we know that this section here is going to be 2.5%, right? We're going to be offering 2.5% to the cooperating broker, which then leaves this side as your side as the listing realtor. If you're going at 4.5 and 4, I'm going to show you what the math looks like to you on that, and why we encourage you, and I encourage you, not to discount your fee, right? Because there's significant losses here. But this side here belongs to you. And so when you're kind of forming the conversation, preparing the conversation with a seller, it's important that you share with them how the fees are broken down, because a lot of sellers are not aware of this actual simple breakdown. They think that you're getting 5% or 4.5% or 4%. So it's part of the education process. This is how it's divided up. Now, when I sold, we were around 6%. Okay, so that was kind of the number we had. I used to bring 6 loonies with me. Okay, and I broke it up 3 and 3. Now at 5, you could do 2 loonies, L, and 2 Qs. 2 loonies, 2 quarters, 250, and then 2 and 2 Q, okay? So sorry, 4 loonies and 4 quarters. That's how you would do it today. It's a visual. So I would pull out of my, actually, I'll tell you, way back in the day, I did a $2 bill and 50 cents and a loonie. We had $2 bills when I first started, yeah. At least I remember we did. So bring out the real coins, right? So you can put it on the table as a visual. It's a visual aid, right? It's a teaching aid. And it helps them understand that this $5 we're talking about, that $2.50 of it doesn't even belong with me. And out of my portion, the $2.50 portion, I have expenses. So I have to pay my taxes. I have to pay my federal income tax, my provincial. If I own a home, I have property taxes. I have other kinds of taxes, but I have taxes. And so, you know, it's a little small sliver. I didn't do it bigger because I didn't want to cause anybody any mental harm. But that part there is a lot bigger for me, for sure. I'm betting for you as well, right? Because we're all successful here. So, but I just wanted to minimize the damage, the psychological damage to you, okay? But that's a bigger part. The business expenses side. So in the first class, we gave you the workbook on expenses. And so you had your professional expenses, personal, and business expenses. So this is where you're going to share with them all these expenses that are in there. And the ones that you want to definitely share with them is the ones that you're going to invest in getting their home sold. So last week, the last chart you saw with me was the fee for service, right? Remember the premium, deluxe, and economy? this is where that all breaks out, and to show them that in this sliver, this is where it's all going to come out. And then, of course, we're left with your net or gross. Sorry, your net, because we're taking those to death. Your net. Now, if you want to make that smaller to show that you're really not making a lot of fees, go ahead. It's a visual aid that you're doing with reinforcement in person to say, okay, here's the $2.50 that I have. $1 of that's going to the government. 50 cents of that's going to the expenses, or $1, and I'm left with 50. You figure out however you want to make that look and make that work, but it's a good kind of aid. And if you think you're going to get the listing and whatnot, give them the 5 coins and make them happy, right? But this is just so you can cement it in their minds and yours, right? Because after doing this as a realtor, you're probably sitting there going, oh yeah, that's really a shame that I'm giving away my fees from 5%, 4.5% to 4%, and now I'm really actually feeling the pain in the visual to see that, right? Yeah. Okay. Any questions on that? So that should be in all of the workbooks, I think, that we provide you at the brokerage for the working with the seller. Okay, the whys you got into the business. Let's go back to class number 1. We had these whys that we all listed. Everybody had the same one. Money, be your own boss. Those were 2 whys that everybody had, and there was a whole bunch of others. But let's just say the money side. The money side, I always look at money as being just a great liberator. Money allows us to do the things that we really want to do, right? So we're limited by our experiences, by the lack of money that we have, okay? There's the other whys there too, and if they're important to you, to raise your family, which is important to me, education for my kids, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, these are all your whys. Because what you're doing when we get into the fee reduction models that we're going to share with you, is you're giving up your whys for somebody else. Okay, so you're making a trade, or you're actually being out traded by somebody else. Somebody else is giving you a more compelling reason for them to have a commission reduction than for you to actually hold firm on your fee. Does that make sense, everybody? Okay. Great. So now we're going to look into the 3 types of business models. This is going to be on page 53, called the commission-ectomies. This is where we're going to actually get into the brain of what happens when we're looking at commission reduction. So this is from a long time ago. As you'll see, that number there was the average sale price when I first started teaching this chart, which was probably back in 2008 or 9. So this is like 15 years, but the numbers all work, okay? So we can put in the new number for Mississauga's $1.5 million, right? But let's just keep it back to these numbers. So a healthy business is what we're gonna look at and examine. This is a 5% total fee healthy business right now. Meaning that on your side, the selling side, the listing side, it's 2.5%. So we're all on the same page, right? We understand. So we're gonna do 10 transactions at $400,000 at 2.5%. That's going to give us the magic number of $100,000. I've kept this too because a lot of realtors, even today, have this magic formula in their mind that they want to make $100,000. I'm telling you that is just a start for you guys in your career, right? This is something, if you're not there yet, yes, let's get there first. But that's just getting warmed up for your business, okay? Like, this is not where I want you to plateau out at $100,000. You're just going to get started at $100,000. But we go $100,000. We're saying 35% are embedded in business expenses. So what is that? It's $35,000. That takes us down to $65,000. Then we have to pay income tax. So we're putting in a very nominal income tax of 32%. Some of you are going to be higher, some of you may be lower, okay? And what are we left with in this situation as a net income? $44,200. This is in a healthy business, grossing $100,000. Now, in here, it may be higher, maybe lower. Chances are it's going to be a little bit lower, but I took some numbers that are not unreasonable numbers to look at when your business is really firing on all cylinders, okay? 35% business expenses, personal and professional is not unheard of. 32% is probably at that range around an accurate number. I've always said to people, you know, paying your taxes, as painful as it is, it's a reflection of the success you have though. If you're not paying taxes, then you're probably not hitting the success levels that you want. So when people complain about it, I think of that. And I also think of, for me, a new way to think about it is what we went through with my daughter last year in her health. Thank God we have a healthcare system that supports us in the public system. Because if we were in the United States, we probably would have spent $500,000 to $600,000 last year in medical expenses. So am I happy to pay taxes? Sure I am, right? It's when you see it not being used properly is the aggravating part, but I've actually experienced firsthand the benefit of having our system. So here you go. There's the net income from $100,000, kind of probably a jarring, eye-opening number, right? And this is the healthy one. Now, what does it look like when we go to a vulnerable business model? So this one here is vulnerable. It's a total fee of 4.5%. Sorry, I went over that. It's 2% to you, 2.5% to the cooperating broker. We're using the same standardization, 10 deals at $400,000. So now our gross fee is $80,000. Remember last slide it said $100,000. So we've already eliminated in this model 20,000, 20%. So we're down to $80,000. We're staying with the 35% there, which is $28,000. We're staying with the 32%, which is another $16,000. Our net income now is $35,360. The last slide was $44,000, right? And change. What happens here is our psychology of realtors is if I cut my commission, well, all I need to do is one more deal and I make it up. That's the mentality we have. But I'm sharing with you that that's not the case, not even in this case. You actually have to do 3 more transactions to make up what you lost there. Because what you're doing is you're losing 9,000. The last slide, your profit per 10 deals was like around $4,000, right? So you need to do 2.5 more deals to make up this loss, the true loss, not 1, but 3. Everybody following and tracking what I'm saying with that? So if we go back here, your net profit, divide that by 10 is 4,420, right? That's your net profit per transaction. So when you cut a deal, cut your fee, we go back to this one, your net income here is $3,500, right? Per deal versus 44. So you got to leverage yourself up and do 3 more deals in this scenario, not 1. But it gets better because now we're going to look at what a terminal business looks like. And terminal is a term that means end of existence, like you die, right? So this is 1.5 to you. So this is a 4% listing. Listen, I'm not oblivious to the fact that a lot of you are listing properties at 4%. So I'm not here to tell you your business is dead or that it's on life support. But it's not functioning and performing at a level that it could be and should be, quite frankly. Because if I walked around the office, and Najee can confirm this because he works a lot in all of our departments, a lot of our top performing agents are not discounting 4% fees. They're at 5%, right? So if they're able to negotiate a fee at 5%, and you're only able to do 1.4, God forbid you go to 3.5, and I didn't even do the math on that because that's just, I don't even want to look at that. So you got to ask yourself, if they're able to get 5%, yes, they've had years and tenure, they got the database, they started exactly where you guys started, maybe brand new, or you got 5-6 deals under your belt. They started there too. In fact, some of our top people in their first year did like 1 deal in the first year. And now they're doing 50 deals, 40 deals. People over 100 deals here. The vast majority of them are not in this terminal business model. There's one-offs that they may have done that for it because there's maybe 4 deals or 3 deals that they're getting as a result of this. So they've looked at a business case analysis and said, okay, we'll do that. But the vast majority, they're not doing that. And now, and Najee is here to say, because he sees it.
Yeah, I see it. 5% for majority, if not a little more sometimes, but 5% is that.
Exactly. So in this model, we've gone from the first slide 100 grand, second slide 80. Now we're down to 60. We're still saying this 35. That's $21,000. Still saying that. That's 12. Your net income now for those 10 deals is $26,000. So you're $2,652 basically per end. Again, this is not the mindset is I only have to do 1 or 2 more deals. In this scenario, we're needing to do 7 more deals. Your loss of true profit was almost $18,000. So, math is one of those things for some of us. It's like going to the dentist. We don't like math, but math is a black and white type of denominator for us to say, here's the true reality of what happens when you are reducing your fees. Did everybody appreciate that kind of commission-ectomy to go, holy moly, I didn't realize how vulnerable, how terminal my business trajectory is by reducing a 0.5 point or 1 full percent. We give away, 1% of $1 million is what?
1,000.
1% of $1 million? Huh?
100,000.
Yeah.
10,000.
You're giving away $10,000 on $1 million property if you reduce your fee by 1%. What could you do with $10,000 in your pocket right now? Is it a vacation? Is it paying your mortgage, paying down your mortgage, paying for education fund for your kid, doing a reno in your house? Who knows? But you're never going to be able to do it if you keep giving it away. And $1 million, so I'm putting real numbers down in front of you, right? And actually the real number would be, to be honest with you, if we're talking averages, it's $15,000. Because the average house in Mississauga is 1.5 right now, right? So you're giving away $15,000 when you reduce your fee by 1%. Do that 10 times. Who would like to make that in a year? Just give it away, right? Listen, as I said before, I'm not oblivious to the fact that there's competition out there. There's people that are out there doing that, giving it away. But if you want to have a long-term successful business that's based upon relationships and trust, if you keep going and giving it away, that's the kind of business you're going to attract over and over and over again. It's really hard. Well, I would say it's impossible for Walmart to become Saks Fifth Avenue, right? Walmart has a audience that they market to, and so does Saks Fifth Avenue, right? So you ask yourself, where do you want to fit on that paradigm? The premium side or the economy side? If you're on the economy side, I'm not here to judge. Great, that's your business model you picked. But bear in mind, you're going to work harder, a lot harder than a lot of other realtors that may take off 2 months a year. We don't want them to take 2 months off the year because they're producing at a high level, but they have that ability, or 3 months off, right? But you're never going to do it like this. You're going to be every day grinding and grinding. And when you do the math at the end of the year, we could help you do the math, quite frankly. So we have a program called Lone Wolf. We could show you what that commission cutting looks like in your personal business based upon your trades. And it's not a nice picture when you look at it at the end of the year when you're cutting all the time, okay? Any questions on what this looked like for everybody? Again, my mindset is just to plant the seed in your brain that by reducing your fee, you're taking away your whys that you got into this business. You're trading them for a quick fix with a seller to get something signed. And so that's why you need to master the objection handling dialogues for getting a listing signed, which we're going to go into a couple of them. Well, this is talking about.
Question from Jenny. She says, would you do it at the beginning of your business just to get your feet wet, cut your commissions?
It's really hard to establish your value when you're giving them away in the beginning. If the people you're going to do that with never become your clients going forward, and they're not part of your relationship database, then perhaps, but when they're included in that relationship database, and when you start doing events, like most of our top realtors are doing these events. I used to do movie theater buys. Did I tell you guys that before? No. Okay, sorry. I tell you tons of stories, and there's so many of them. But I used to do a movie theater buyout on a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning before the theater would open to the public. They still are okay to do that. Like, you can, these movie theaters will love to take your money when you can fill a room or movie theater at 8 o'clock in the morning. Now, I would pick family-friendly movies like Star Wars, Cars, Bugs Life, Shrek. Those are the kind of movies that I would pick. And my first one was not a very successful one because I sent out all the invitations to mom and dad, and mom and dad, put it on their sort of radar, but really didn't. And so the first one I had only had like 20, 25 people in this audience. Well, they got lots of popcorn, lots of pop, and they had the movie theaters themselves. And when I looked at what went wrong, a couple people whispered, "Hey, Mike, why don't you try inviting the kids instead?" Right. So my next one, I invited, little Johnny. Little Johnny, made mom and dad take her to Star Wars, right? And little Johnny was inviting his friends in the neighborhood, who I was okay with, as long as their mom and dad came, because I'm not going to be responsible for their kid, right? Right. So I had all these people in the audience. So my last couple, I had 2 full movie theaters that I had built out as part of my my movie theater. And in the last few of them as well, it didn't cost me a dime because I had a lawyer there that helped offset the cost, my building inspector, my mortgage people. They were paying to be there in front of hundreds of people. So if you're going to build a database like that, right, where you're having your people interact with each other, then cutting right off the bat becomes that debate, right? Do you want to have somebody like that in the audience that you get a fee for 4%? Now, if you're going to use what I taught you last week, which is the fee model system, then you can always say that that person chose the economy package, not the premium package, right? That's why I created that, so that it wouldn't have that issue and I wouldn't have that problem. But here's the thing. If you're going to start down that path, right, the dark side path, to use a Star Wars thing, how hard is it going to be for you to get back to this type of model, full fee service model? So I hope I answered the question and gave a little bit of insight. I just would be very careful about going down that. And it's also, you've taken the bite of the forbidden fruit, right? And it's hard sometimes to change that habit. It becomes a custom and a habit for you. When I highly not recommend. Talking points. So we're always talking about reducing our fee by 1% or 1.5%. And as I showed you, at $1.5 million, 1% is $15,000. $15,000 to your buyers and sellers is a lot of money. Like, think about the weeks and months that the average Canadian has to work to make $15,000 gross, right? The average Canadian, I think, makes about $60,000 now, or somewhere around that number. This here is a quarter of that, $60,000. That means it takes them 3 months, the average Canadian, to make 15 grand. And you're giving it away in 15 seconds. Again, using simple math, you got whys of why you're in the business. They got whys why they want you to give it away, or there's other people that are giving it away that are, at other companies. That's fine. You just have to come back with why are you here? What service level you're going to give, and are you prepared to walk away from that kind of thing? Versus Why don't we talk in their language, which is, let's do a quarter point deduction, or $500, or, you know, $1,500 if you want to go crazy. Why don't you come back with something like that? It's more reasonable. Again, our business, by the way, is a performance-based business. You don't get paid unless you perform. We all agree with that? Right. Just because you walk in and sign the listing at 4% because you couldn't argue your whys versus their whys, you're not getting 4% until you have a successful outcome. Do you want to have a seller that's knocked you down to 4%, told you what the list price should be, and then go to market and have them call you 4 or 5 times a day? Why isn't my house sold? What's going on? What's the feedback? Do you want that in your life? Probably not.
Also, instead of making that they're so easily negotiating their commission with you on the other end of the deal, you can push over there too.
Yeah. Listen, here's another reality. If you give it away at the kitchen table when you list the property, there's really no opportunity for you in a situation when push comes to shove, and maybe we're $1,000 apart with the other buyer, 2,000. Maybe at the generosity of your heart, you help bridge that. But if you've given it away already, are you going to give even more? Like you're going to give your firstborn kid away too? So, you know, you're limiting your maneuverability and the opportunity that you have to make things happen. It's part of an objection handling dialogue formula. It's not one of the ones that I'm going to give you here, but it is one you can use. All right, so we're never capitulate without a fight. This is trading your whys in for their whys. Don't do that. Next one. If it goes through, will it go through? I don't think it wants to go through. You want to manually do it for me? So we're going to give you some scenarios that you probably come across in your career from sellers. Who's ever had a seller tell you another realtor said they would cut their commission when you're at the kitchen table? I would say 100% of us have had that. So here's 4 dialogues you can add to your list and repertoire of objection handling dialogues. This one here was by far my favorite when I sold real estate. So Najee, what you're saying to me is if that realtor can't even negotiate their own fee, how good and what's the likelihood they're going to negotiate the sale price of your home? So if I'm prepared to give my money away right now at the kitchen table, you think I'm going to be able to give your money away then too, or I'm going to fight for your money? If I can't fight for my own, good luck that I'm going to fight for yours. All right. So that's the basics of that. I embellished on it, but essentially, you know, yeah, great. That other realtor did that, Najee. They're giving their own money away. But what about your money? When it comes time for me to negotiate the sale price of your home, if I can't do it for myself, you have confidence and faith in me to do it for you. And I don't. Right. So you smack them right back in the face. It's like, whoa, it stuns them. All right. Practice it though, and variations on it. Like, so there's other ones here. They've admitted they don't even see value in themselves, which is true. They just come to the table and they've given away $15,000. Well, if that realtor knew what they know what their worth is better than I do. Want to work with them? Go ahead. Right? Line up lots of realtors to do it for less. So these are just high-level dialogues. You take them, internalize them, don't memorize them, internalize them how you want to have the conversation. Right? These are the frameworks of what they look like. You take them, break them up, change them up, combine them. I don't care, but you got to come back with something. This is the case where somebody's going to another realtor is going to cut their commission. All right. I know each and every one of you, when you go to a listing presentation, there's going to be a seller that brings that up. So now you have a couple of objection responses for them. There might actually be the second page, might be some more there. No. No. Okay. This one. Will you cut your commission if I buy from you? This one here is a little bit more difficult. I will say that right up front. The reality is when you take a listing and a purchase, if that's what they're doing with you as well, your regulatory responsibility doesn't go in half, right? So your regulatory responsibility is still the same. In fact, your workload is incredibly more difficult because you're going to try and coordinate closing dates on both sides, mortgages, lawyers, appraisers, lenders, all kinds of things are starting to combine. And so, you know, your regulatory and legal risks are magnified. So you may want to do this in your business. I did. So when somebody did buy with me, if you saw my fee for service model, there was a reality built in for that, that there was a, you know, double purchase or sorry, double transaction. I would help them. But you want to be very mindful about how much you're going to help for that. Okay. Because you are increasing your legal risk. And with Tressa's new regulations for phase 2 being implemented, as I said earlier, very soon, the punishments and fines are going to be incredibly severe. No more warnings, no more go take a course. Like there's going to be some serious fines when people screw up. Okay. If it sells quickly, will you cut your commission? So this is a question you get asked all the time, right? Here's some funny ones to say. So if I did a really poor job and take longer to sell your house, you would want to pay me more. So you're hiring me essentially, Najee, to sell your house for the most amount of money for the least amount of time. And if I do that, you want me to take a pay cut. But if I did the other side of that, if I took longer to sell your home and I sold it for less than you wanted, would you give me a raise for that? So it's a flip side to it, okay? It's a comical way to come back at them. In this business, you get paid for results. The sooner I get the results you want, the better I've done my job with the least inconvenience to you. But it would make more sense to have you give me a bonus. That's when you laugh, right? So if I really did a good job, you know, I sold it in the first 2 hours, I should get a bonus. Right? All the way you have. If time is a problem, we can reject the offer and wait for another one. So Najee, like if you really wanted to sit on the market for 30 days, to vacuum your house every day, to take the dishes out of the sink every day, to leave the house with your dogs every day, 3 or 4 times a day, we can do that. We can wait for 30 days if that's the time you want, and we'll reject every offer up until that point. That make sense?
That makes no sense.
Okay. Right. Again, practicing the dialogue. I haven't sold since 2006, but I can still do these dialogues like I'm still back in the business because I've spent hundreds and hundreds of hours. Now, backing up in my day, we had tape cassettes in our cars and CDs, so I listen to this stuff all the time. But now you guys can download it to your iPhones or to your Samsungs and to your Androids. You want these dialogue, practice them, put them to your phone, and listen to them constantly. Or you can listen to Q107 and Metallica and Ozzy and all that stuff too. Or you can put the good stuff in your brain. Okay. Next one is, if she goes, will you unbundle your fee? So we don't do that at Royal LePage. So the unbundling your fee model is actually not out there as much right now. But we did have this occur 4 or 5 times, say, in the last 20 years, where companies would come out and say, we're just going to do what we call mere listings. So the big one just went bankrupt. The big one was the company that was ComFree. Then it became, oh gosh, see, I forget them. They went through 3 different refreshes, but ComFree was their first one. Purple Bricks, so they became Purple Bricks. And then the last one they became was some financial company out of Quebec bought them, like one of the insurance companies. But anyways, they've gone bankrupt because their business model, you know, didn't pay the bills, basically, right? If you're giving it away, you know, let's be honest. Like anybody can have a business model and run a business. I have no problem with that. Competition's good. Not my fault though that your business goes bankrupt because you don't have a proper business model around it, right? Kind of why we describe the commission-ectomy. If you don't have a good business model around it and you're cutting your fee, and you're going to go out of business eventually, just like that company did. So these guys would just list you on MLS. So it'd be like, Najee, yeah, you don't want my services, you don't want my staging, you don't want my marketing, my website, my drone, my Matterport, you don't want all this kind of stuff that I'm gonna do, all these open houses, flyers, the list goes on and on. You just want me to put it on MLS, great, $900 or $600. And then you walk away. Sellers on their own. Or in some of the models, they could pay a little small fee to have some representation when an offer comes in. But most of them don't have that. Most of the sellers are on their own with their lawyer negotiating a fee. So this is here for those models. There are a few of them still out there. I find they're out more now in the Guelph and the Cambridge and the Kitchener marketplace. So if you're out there, you may bump into one of these companies that is a mere listing service. You'll know that because in the descriptions, they'll say, please contact seller directly for appointments and offers, right? There's not as many of them around. I'm sure it'll resurrect itself yet again. Somebody else will come up with like, hey, this is a brilliant idea, and they'll go and run it and they'll market it. And it's like the next thing, best thing since sliced bread, and it'll fail. Because in my career, 1992, there's been dozens of these models that have come and gone. The first one in my business, when I can remember, was a company called Pear Tree. I can still remember that, and it had a picture of a pear on the sign. Pear Tree did the same thing. They're out of business. There was a company called the Great Canadian Real Estate Company. Wasn't so great. It went out of business. Same. Okay. If you double end it, will you cut your commission? This is again the kind of thing where if you do another transaction. So double ending here though is on the listing side. There's a question.
Sorry, like
Yeah.
a question in the chat.
Yeah.
So just ask if you can please define what unbinding your fees looks like.
Unbundling.
Unbundling.
Well, that's the mere listing, right? So that's, I'm just going to list your property and then put it on MLS and I'm gone. There's others that had modified where they would provide other services. So I'll go back to the slide there. So unbundle. So you got full service, which is what we advocate you do. Call it economy service and mere service. So in a full service, we're not unbundling anything, right? Look, we're coming to the game fully ready. Every tool's in a toolbox ready to have a successful outcome for it. In an economy, we're taking some of those out. Okay, so we're not unbundling, but we're not providing all of these services. In a mere service unbundling model, you're not doing anything except for punting it on MLS. This is the only service you are doing, MLS. There was a great, like 10, 15 years ago, there was this great movement where they thought that this was going to be the thing that puts us out of business as organized real estate. Because all the sellers really need is to get onto the MLS. Because MLS sells everything. That's the mindset. That's not the reality. When you do the math on, I call it the list to sell ratio. It's a calculation that I've been tracking for 25 years. If you look at historically speaking, it's like 65% of MLS listings sell, only 65%. Only 65% sell. Everybody says, everybody's mindset is 100%. Every listing sells. In some markets, you're right. Like in a market like right now, you're pretty much going to guarantee a sale price because we're back into a extreme seller's market again, okay? But traditionally, stretch it out, only about 2/3 of all listings actually sell. So sellers thought with this mere listing thing, all they needed to do was get on the MLS because, of course, you do nothing. There's no value add to what you bring as a realtor to the table. You're just putting a sign on the lawn and getting it on MLS and it sells itself. And you get paid all this money to do it. How wrong? So this is the reality. What happened with these sellers that go on, they pay Najee $1,000. The typical one's $1,000, $999, just for the mirror. That's money paid up front, by the way. That's not paid on performance like how we're paid. They get that money up front. And the vast majority of them were not even in the 65%. Like 5% of them sold, but they gave away $1,000. So that's what the unbundling is unbundling to the, I'm just doing one, I'm distilling it down, I'm putting it on the MLS, and that's it. And oh, by the way, give me $1,000 to do it. Then I'm gone. And that money's gone. Until somebody like you shows up with a full service package, knows what you're doing, and leverages all of these strategies you're going to put in place for them to have a successful outcome. Because you're partnering with them in a successful outcome. Otherwise, you're just a charity. If you're just going to go to listings without the mindset and vision of selling it in your charity or social work or helping somebody through this decision. No, you are performance-based. You sign that listing. You do not get a positive financial outcome unless you complete the job. These ones don't have that. They just want your money. Yeah.
So is mere listing like a step up from like for sale by owner?
For sale by owner is not an MLS.
And this one is.
This is a for sale by owner that thinks that we have no value, but then goes to a realtor and says, put it on MLS and thinks there's value just on going on MLS.
So actually, my understanding, unbundle is just the opposite of bundle. Bundle means everything put together, full service. Unbundle is piece by piece, whatever is to be offered.
So these two, as I said before, and inside of full service, we have, we have premium, deluxe, economy, right? There's the three models that I gave you. The pure unbundling is called a mere listing service, where there's nothing more, nothing less than they want is to get on MLS because they think that's the ultimate solution, that it sells everything. And I'm here to tell you that, no, it's not. This is with full service realtors is only 65%, okay? In the mere listing where there's no other collateral marketing or anything else being done, they're only selling 5 to 10% because of course, these people here not only want to save the fee, but they also want to find an idiot buyer out there that's going to pay 10% more than what their house is worth. So they never sell. It's the word idiot, but they're really fishing for a sucker. It's going to swim around and see that listing and think, oh, that's a great deal, but they've overpaid for it. So the seller then pays no fee and oversells to somebody. But then, of course, you have the lenders that'll know the true values. So that buyer that now goes to get a mortgage may not be able to get one unless they have to pay the difference in the appraisal value. So hopefully that answered that question.
I think we got one more question.
Oh, okay.
She asks, based on the pie chart that was shown earlier,
Yeah.
it seems that the listing agent makes less money than the buyer's agent. Is that true?
Yes and no. The buyer's agent also has expenses that they're incurring, which is their gas, their time, their energy. You're spending about 4 to 5 times more working with a buyer than you are with a seller. So if you recall back to the first class, we went through that one Excel file that we gave you, the real estate business planning Excel file, where you see that the hours invested with a buyer is 4 to 5 times more than a seller. Time is money in our business, right? So when you overlay that reality equation into it, yeah, it looks like the selling side is making less than the buying side, but you could do 4 times more listings than you can with buyers. You know what I'm saying? All right, let's go up. Doesn't want to go. All right, maybe just do a manual for me, but the double lending one. This is something that again becomes a business decision for you. You have a listing, the buyer comes along, it sees it on MLS or realtor.ca, or you do an open house. They want to put an offer in, they don't have another realtor. Are you willing to reduce your fee? Again, business decision. I would caution you though, that if your offer or listing goes to multiple offers, that if you are going to reduce your fee because you have your own buyer and there's other buyers, you have to disclose that to all the other realtors. That could possibly cause other buyers not to bring their best offer or even an offer at all. Because, oh, the listing agent has an offer, they know what all the offers are, they're just going to make it so that they win, right? So you may discourage other offers. So my advice, if you're going to do a double lend and reduce your fee, that it would only occur in what's called single agency situation, meaning You're the only agent. There's no other competing offers. It's just you representing the seller and the buyer in whatever relationship you decide to be with the buyer. So you can have either a customer relationship with the buyer, or you can have a client representation with the buyer, which puts you in multiple representation. Okay. So right now, under our regulations, we have multiple representation if you're representing both buyer and seller as clients. That is going to change under the new phase 2 of TRESA. You'll have the opportunity to be called designated agency, which means, let's say it's Najee and John, okay? I can represent both of you in designated agency as a client. Right now, I could either be client to you, customer to John, or multiple representation. Problem with multiple representation, as I always felt it was, I now no longer can provide fiduciary duties to either party, meaning I can't advise Najee or John on the price, the motivation, or any of those types of details of the offer. I have to be neutral and impartial. And I might have known Najee for 10 years. He's my buddy, and I just met John at the open house. Never made sense to me to provide the same level of service there, right? So we'd always go customer. But this new regulation will cause the ability to do both and to be open. Again, you as the realtor get to choose that. You don't have to make them designated agents. You can say, sorry, if you want to work with me, John, I've just met you, you're going to be a customer. My client is Najee, and it's going to remain Najee. If that works for you, great. If it doesn't, I'm happy to refer you to another agent in my office. Because that's where the other part of designated agency works for us as a big company. You can now outsource that to Michael Stuthers, manager in the office, and he can now work as a client under designated agency with that buyer. Yeah.
And then are there rules where you and Michael will no longer be able to talk for that same transaction so that you don't end up sharing?
In designated agency, we are completely siloed. So we do not have any communication. There's no sharing of knowledge. It's completely separate in designated agency. And multiple representation too. Like we're not supposed to be doing any type of crossing of the line there. Okay.
But if suppose two different agents are representing from the same brokerage under TRESA, then will there be any rules where those, because now they'll be giving fiduciary duties.
Yep.
Now, so if they meet with each other, they will likely happen to share some of the other motivation. I mean,
they shouldn't be. They should.
So there should be rules regarding that as well.
There will be, yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. You are representing your fiduciary responsibilities to each of those people, which, to your point right there, privacy, right, and confidentiality. You'd be breaching those two terms of fiduciary duty, right? If the two of you were realtors here in the office, you are, not Najee's staff, but if you started talking back and forth and hammering a deal out and sharing confidential private information, then you guys are offside. Like you're violating the act. So you don't do that, right? You treat Najee like he's from another brokerage, even though he's in our brokerage. But the designated agency is going to provide you the opportunity to represent that fiduciary, which I think is brilliant. It's a really good, it's a good model. It exists in a lot of other provinces in Canada. It's now coming into Ontario. So that's a good thing that we're going to adopt. Okay. Next one. I'm in a bad way. Can you help me out? So this is somebody that's, maybe experiencing some financial distress. They may have had a job loss or illness in the family. And so if that's the reason why they're in a bad way, you can, think of yourself and how charitable you can be to help them out. I think I might have shared this with you last week or the week before, though. If it's somebody that's a gambler or has other addictions and they've wasted their equity and their money, is it really you helping them out because they're in a bad way that happened because of this health thing or job, or is it because it's something that they've done to themselves? So your decision, do you want to participate in getting this person out of the gambling problem and debt that they did, right? Do you really want to, become that charity for that person? So it's getting to the root of why are you in a bad way? Now, listen, for people that had serious illnesses and things like that, job losses, absolutely 100%. I personally would help you as much as I can, right? your call, your decision, your business. But if that person was a degenerate gambler or had major addictions and they put themselves in a financial bad situation, well, I have that choice to work with you or not work with you. And if I'm going to work with you, I'm not going to enable you to do more of this by saving you money. Like, this is my fee. This is what it is. And you're going to want it for those people that financially in a bad way because of that. Make sure there's equity in the house, right? Especially the last year. If somebody bought a house at the peak of the market last year and the market went down 20-something% on average, although it's coming back, my guess is most of them are still negative equity. And so if they're having to sell right now and they bought last year or 2 years ago, you're going to want to make sure that there's equity in the property to be paid. Because the moment you go to MLS and put it on the system, that's actually a contract you're putting out to the marketplace to other realtors that you're going to compensate them whatever the fee is. So if it's 2.5%, you're actually making that offer to other brokerages and saying, we're going to pay you 2.5 on a successful completed offer. If there's no equity there, then there's a problem. There's a problem that you're going to have, the broker's going to have, and the seller's going to have, but you're part of the problem. And so by checking to see what that statement looks like, what the equity situation looks like, you again get to make that choice. Do I work with these people or do I walk away? If they're negative equity, you're probably gonna, well, you may want them to put some money into a commission account up front. They can do that, right? Probably not going to be able to do that because they're underwater. Okay. We're actually seeing a few situations now where properties are going power of sale. I haven't seen that in years, many years, but we're actually seeing some of the byproduct of what happened last year coming to fulfillment. And so it takes about 5 or 6 months to go through the process. So we started seeing that about 2 or 3 months ago. And I imagine we're still going to see the odd one come along. Okay.
One more question, Mike.
Yeah.
Sue asked, in the previous slide, you mentioned about double ending a deal. So if you're representing both buyer and seller as a client, is that a conflict of interest?
No. So currently right now, we have multiple representation as an option, or we have customer service as an option for one of the two people. In multiple representation or customer service, you're making that notation, and what we have is the confirmation of cooperation, right? So that document is a 2-page document. It actually is to be presented before the offer, right? So if you look at the confirmation of cooperation, a lot of us send it as part of the offer, usually at the end of the offer, like the offer first, then that. The true way of conveying that is that goes first, and then you send your offer. And you know, the proper structure, that's how it's done. And in that document, you are saying who you work for and under what kind of relationship. So there's no conflict of interest, representing both as clients, but both clients have to sign off on that confirmation of cooperation document that they agree to it. Now you have to explain to them what your limitations are. And I shared with you what they really are. You cannot discuss price, and you cannot discuss the motivation for selling to either party. You literally, if you think of it from a visual in your brain, you're standing on a razor blade. That's how thin the ice is here for you. You're on a razor blade, and you can't tilt to one side or the other. As I said earlier, you know, if Najee is my seller, and I've had a relationship with Najee for 10, 15 years, and we've bought and sold many properties, why would I put somebody that I've met at an open house into the same relationship that I have with Najee? I would tell him or her, you know, great, if you want to work with me, it'll be under a customer service model. I'll treat you fairly and honestly, but that's it. I have no knowledge to give you as far as pricing, what the motivations here are. If you're okay with just getting, you know, good faith and honesty, then fantastic. If not, I'm happy to refer you to somebody else, or you can go pick somebody else that can be your client style relationship. Okay. Designated agency, though, as I said before, it's going to be a brilliant inclusion to Tressa, where we could actually do both. So I could advise both. But here's the thing: you make that decision with your seller. I always erred on the side of the relationship, meaning I stayed in my relationship with the seller and I put the buyer that I just met under customer. That's how I did it, right? The bad way going forward. Yeah, we're already at, I finished the class in like an hour and 20 minutes. Are you kidding me? What's going on? You know, the whole afternoon. So this is I threw a little bit at you as far as dialogues. I'm going to see if I can get to you guys some scripts and dialogues from some of the people that I took courses from. I'm going to see if I can get Matt to get that uploaded into your system and listen to some of these out. They're old, you know, they're 20, 30 years old, but they're as relevant and practical today as they were when I used them. But it's all about getting out, practicing and rehearsing what you want to make internal to you in these situations. Because here's the reality. Every listing you go to, you're going to have them asking about your fee and reducing it, and they're going to want to control the price. You know those two things going in. How good are you? How strong are you at advocating for your whys, not their whys? So if any other questions, we'll take them. Otherwise, we'll see you guys next week. It's the negotiating class next week, and we'll be done the program. Can you believe it? It's been 4 months or 4 weeks already. Yeah. So hopefully everybody's making strides in their business, doing the lead generation activities, booking appointments, closing on contracts, getting out there and getting the business going. Because the market right now, this is the time. Like you guys started 4 weeks ago, the market was pivoting. Now the market's pivoted. So hopefully you've done some of that work so that you're benefiting from that pivot right now. I imagine we're going to have another 2 or 3 months of really good market. If the Bank of Canada intercedes and does a rate increase, that could put a bit of a break on what's happening right now. But even if the break happens, people are still going to buy and sell real estate. It's a matter of you getting out there and finding those people who want to buy, sell, refer real estate. Pretty simple. We make it too complicated sometimes. Anyways, thank you very much for today. And I'm impressed myself that I did it in an hour, actually about an hour and 15 minutes. So there you go. We'll see you guys next week. And thank you to Najee for being our eye in the sky. You did a great job.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. Take care. All right.
I watched the Founder movie over the weekend.
The Founder is amazing,
Yeah,
eh?
it's really like
Yeah.
practicing the mirror, all that stuff.